iOptima from BN Air. What stands out to you about that?
You know, iOptima, this is one of the coolest ideas that I've seen come down the pipe in a long time. And it's interesting how our world has changed. You know, I built a new office 6.5 years ago. And when I built that office, I remember a lot of my friends were teasing me about, oh, yeah, got a plan for a lot of technology and that thing, John. And, you know, we tried to. And as I told folks, it's really hard to plan for something when you're trying to plan for technology and yet the technology doesn't exist. And, you know, trying to think of, well, gosh, what could be invented in 2 years from now that I need to plan for when I'm doing my layout of, you know, electrical conduit or whatever. I built that office 6.5 years ago. I moved in January, and in June, Steve Jobs announced a little gizmo called the iPhone, 6 months after I built the office. And as we all know, the iPhone changed the world. You know, the iPod had started to change the world before that. And when they got to, you know, the touchscreen iPod, you know, what later became, you know, the iPhone for all intents and purposes. And what the iOptima does from a handpiece standpoint is the iOptima marries the iPod with a handpiece system. And what I mean by that is it sounds, at first people are like, what? It does what? But the iOptima has an app that accesses an electric handpiece, and it allows you to constantly update an electric handpiece with the latest parameters needed to keep that handpiece up to date. And once again, people are probably thinking, John, you know, the handpiece, the high speed was invented in the 40s, and I've done really well without, you know, an electronic update to my handpiece since then. What's the big deal? What's really cool about this is, and I'm going to use Endo as an example because Endo is a great example of this. The iOptima has not only a high-speed component, you know, that snaps onto it with a quick disconnect, but it also has an Endo, you know, handpiece that snaps onto the motor. And what's interesting about this is, okay, let's say that in my office I happen to use Cybron Endo's twisted files for my rotary component. And those rotary files have certain parameters. They need to rotate at a certain RPM. And they can't exceed a certain number of Newton centimeters in torque. I mean, everybody knows that with rotary files there are these components, RPM and torque. Well, I can buy a system that today works great and it has all the parameters for that particular file system. But you know what? I can spend all the money on this handpiece system, and then 2 weeks from now somebody creates a new file system. Or 2 weeks from now Cybron decides that, oh wait, we've changed the parameters of our twisted files and you can now rotate them at this RPM and apply this torque. Well, if I just bought an Endo motor, I'm dead in the water. I mean, I've just bought all this, you know, hardware. Now what am I going to do with it? Well, what is really cool about the iOptima is the iOptima has an app. The iOptima has a docking station that allows you to connect an iPod to the handpiece system. And basically what you can do is, if a new Endo file comes out, when you update the apps from the App Store, those new parameters for that Endo file gets downloaded to the device. And then when you connect that iPod, you know, through the Lightning port to the handpiece system, it updates the handpiece system with those parameters automatically. So you have a dynamic platform that allows you to constantly be up to date with every doggone Endo system, every burr, everything. It can all be controlled electronically, and that is a game changer.